welcome once again to Trooth's Manga Cafe. This time in my winter 2024 recap, I will be talking about the new series that I picked up and plan to read more of. First one I'd like to talk about is City. Now you might not be familiar with this one. It came out a few years ago. I wasn't familiar with it until it had an anime adaptation announced, which I think is going to be sometime in 2025, but not sure when yet. I'm guessing probably like fall-ish. But City is a manga by the creator of Nichijou, and Nichijou is just really distinct. I've actually not read it, but I have watched the anime. I'm actually in the middle of rewatching it because it's just fantastic. And if you do have any familiarity with Nichijou, City is very much in that vein. It's just like a lot of absurdist slice-of-life comedy, only instead of like centering on this group of high schoolers, plus Nano the robot and Hakase and their cat, Sakamoto, it has a much broader cast. It's about people all over this city called City, and it's all a lot of like very episodic short stories about their daily lives, much like Nichijou. It's hard to describe very much beyond that, but you know, I think if you liked one, then you will absolutely love the other. I read 5 volumes of City so far, and there's not very many of them. I think it's a complete series, maybe a little more than 10 volumes in total. But yeah, I am loving it. I can't wait to see it animated, especially if it's going to be in the same style as Nichijou, where they went way over the top on the animation, which was 100% like in service of the anime. It made it so much better. A thing I really love about this artist's style is just that everything is just so like clean looking. It's so like geometrically perfect. There's just so many like perfectly straight lines in all the backgrounds and on objects. And even like the characters in large part are made up of very straight lines, except where they can't be. It's a very recognizable, very singular style, which is a great reason to love these series, if nothing else. A thing I really loved, it was in like volume 4 or 5 of City, is there's a stretch of like 6 to 8, maybe even like 10-ish pages, where like both pages are taken up by a single illustration, and it's a huge crowd illustration. Just dozens of characters on the page, and little like speech bubbles scattered throughout addressing, you know, what all of these different characters are doing all at the same time. And you know, you turn the page and it's the same scene, but a few seconds later, and you turn the page again and it's the same scene, but a few seconds later. So, you know, instead of having like individual panels of like all of these dozens of characters talking and going through their individual moments, it's showing all of those things and how they're happening simultaneously within a like contiguous space. And I really loved that. I've never seen anything like that in comics before. I really loved it. I kind of wonder how that's going to be adapted in the anime, because I don't know how you could do something like that on screen. You can't just like have the shot be all of those characters on screen simultaneously and all simultaneously talking. It would just be the noise of a crowd. It would be incomprehensible. And plus, I don't know, like, you could do it as like a panning shot and show what all of the characters are doing in sequence, but then to show the passage of time, you would have to like go back to the beginning and then slowly pan across the crowd again like 3 times. Like, it just wouldn't work. So yeah, like that part in particular, I'm very curious to see how they adapt. Leave a comment down below on how you would adapt that sequence of pages. What do you think is best? What do you think the animation studio is gonna do? Like, comment, subscribe. Another series I started fairly recently is the manga adaptation of Elden Ring. I guess these days I don't talk about video games very much on my channel, but I absolutely adore Elden Ring. I think it's the best From Software game. It might even be one of my favorite video games of all time, honestly. I've played all the way through it twice. I did a complete second playthrough just for when the DLC came out, and I really want to do another playthrough of it with like a randomizer mod on. I would also love to play through the whole game co-op, but I can't get any friends who would commit to a full co-op playthrough with me. Recently they announced that there's going to be another Elden Ring game, and this one's going to be multiplayer focused. I don't know if any of my friends are going to play it with me. Anyway, the Elden Ring manga, while I might be a complete lore fiend for Elden Ring and like I love watching lengthy YouTube videos analyzing it, the manga is absolutely not that, and in fact it's kind of a parody of Elden Ring. But it's honestly really funny. I ended up liking it quite a bit, even though, you know, it's not giving you insights into the deep lore of the game or anything. It's basically in the style of, like, a player character going through the experiences of a new player. You know, like, stumbling his way through the tutorial, and getting bodied by the tree sentinel immediately upon starting the game, and trying to figure out how summoning works and make his way through the castle at the beginning. But yeah, honestly, like, some of it really is honestly funny, and the art is quite good as well. Some of the backgrounds I think might be screenshots of the game, kind of like either traced over or run through a filter. But if not, then like they're very true to the game. Some of the humor, like, especially hits if you have like played the game in depth. Like, there's a part where Blythe meets, I forget this other character's name, and they're both talking about their devotion to Ranni and basically trying to prove who's the bigger Ranni fanboy. And, you know, they have their little miniature dolls of her, like you get in the game, except this one other character has, like, changed her outfit to be a maid costume and is like making her do a cutesy pose, and Blythe is like, no, you are completely going about being a Ranni fan wrong. You don't deserve her adoration like I do. I'm really liking it. I think I've only read like 2 volumes, and there's like 3 or 4 out in English, so I need to get caught up on those. But really loving that a lot. Another one that I have started, which I'm not going to talk about too much in length, is Soul Eater. I say not too much in length because I've only read like a couple of volumes of it so far. But I don't know, it's one of those series that I've had on my back burner for years. It's something I've always wanted to get around to. It seems like something I would like, but I've just like never bothered to make the time for it. I'm trying to do that this year. Soul Eater is kind of interesting because it's part of that generation of like early 21st century weeaboos in America. You know, Soul Eater would be one of those shows watched by people who saw Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon and needed to seek out more anime and had to go to the internet for it. I also think Soul Eater is like the missing link between when Hot Topic was a goth store and when it became an anime store. Soul Eater, it just has that perfect, like, in-between art style where it's like sorta goth and it's just sort of like regular-ass anime. It's a little bit like Nightmare Before Christmas through the lens of a Japanese manga artist. Everything is like very Halloween-y. But anyway, yeah, I'm not very far into Soul Eater yet. The only things I know about it are the anime apparently had a very different ending from the manga. I think people didn't like that. I know that the art style is really cool. I love the composition of illustrations, especially in the action scenes. I also know that the artist is quite horny. I know when Fire Force was coming out, a lot of people were commenting on that, and people were saying, you know, if you read Soul Eater, you would already know this was coming. And I know a lot of people are put off by that. I can kind of understand that as well. I'm just kind of like, yeah, I mean, this happens. It's not the worst thing I've seen, unfortunately. But I will keep going with Soul Eater, and I will probably have more to report on it by my summer recap of 2025. Hopefully I'll have finished it by then. It's not like an extremely long series, so stay tuned for more of Soul Eater eventually. Alright, now the last thing I want to talk about, another new series I picked up, which is maybe the best thing ever. I bought both volumes of it that are out right now. It's Tank Chair. There's Volume 2's cover if you want to see Volume 2. So I had no idea Tank Chair existed, I had no idea it was coming out, I had no idea it was a thing in the world, until one day I opened a box of shipment in the Manga Cafe, I saw it sitting in there, and immediately I was just like, this rules. I just saw the cover and I was like, oh my god, I need to read this. And let me tell you, it doesn't disappoint. I am so glad Tank Chair got translated into English. I don't know why it did. Hopefully this means it's like getting an anime at some point. But please go start reading Tank Chair right away. The premise of Tank Chair, it takes place in the far-off dystopian future of 2025 AD, and it's about the world's gnarliest hitman who has been paralyzed because of a bullet lodged in his brain, and the only thing that can wake him up from his comatose state is sensing somebody else's urge to kill him, or just urge to kill in general. And when he does actually wake up, he still has all of his gnarly hitman skills and just absolutely obliterates his enemies while still being wheelchair bound. And he's got this mask, of course, that is like a mix between Kamen Rider and Jason Voorhees, and he's doing all of his killing from the wheelchair still, and he's fighting just all kinds of crazy enemies, like these mutant people. He's fighting like a giant gorilla guy in, I think, the first chapter. He's got different wheelchairs for different situations. Like the one he uses to defeat the Gorilla Man is the Heavy. In Chapter 2, he's fighting against a sniper, and he uses a specialized chair called the Cannon. Man, like, I'm so excited to talk about this manga. I'm just listing all of the cool shit that's in it, and I'm like kind of doing a bad job of recapping the story. Basically, the main character in the Tank Chair, he has a little sister, and she's trying to find a cure for him, partly because he was paralyzed trying to protect her. That's how he got the bullet wound that paralyzed him. And so she's actually going around trying to find other gnarly hitmen to attack her brother and, like, reawaken him. Like, when he senses their killing intent, he wakes up and fights them. And sometimes, you know, he stays conscious for a little longer. And she's like, oh, hey, maybe it's helping that you're going around fighting more people. But, you know, he ends up slipping back into the coma every time, until somebody tries to kill him again. And it's kind of funny, like, she actually wakes him up herself sometimes by, like, trying to stab him with a big knife. And, you know, he just wakes up just in time and, like, stops it with 2 fingers, and he's like, oh, hey, how's it going? It's just fantastic. If you love just, like, pulpy, semi-post-apocalyptic, semi-cyberpunk action, then, like, you gotta be reading Tank Chair. It's just awesome, indulgent violence, some humor, and honestly, like, a pretty compelling story. In Volume 2, you get introduced to this character who is basically suggested to be immortal and to have existed since the dawn of humanity. And, like, I was not expecting this at all from this series about a hitman in a wheelchair. There's also some elements of like a whole school for assassins, and you know, the main character is meeting up with his old classmates from school who are trying to fight him and stop him also. It's one of those things where, like, as soon as I saw it, I knew if I got what the cover suggested to me, I would walk away satisfied. And I did get that, and I got even more than I expected to. Like, even getting to the end of Volume 2, it's still going strong. I am still absolutely loving it. Even more so by the second volume. Like, I so badly want to read more of Tank Chair. Cannot wait for Volume 3, I will definitely be buying it. Tank Chair, as it stands right now, is a buy on site for me. It's a pre-order every volume series. And you should be reading it too. Okay, well, I think I did a pretty good job of keeping things brief enough this time. Last time I sat down to record this, I think I ended up taking like 4 or 5 hours to get all of my thoughts out. But this time it's only a little over 2 hours. Much better this time. Hopefully that means these videos will get edited and put out sooner. Another thing that I kind of forgot to bring up, I didn't really know when to squeeze this into the videos, was I think I read one more volume of Candy and Cigarettes, and I bought volume 10, which is right here with me. I have this at home, and I actually have not read volume 10 yet. So I didn't have a whole lot of thoughts to share about Candy and Cigarettes this time. I think I'm probably just going to hold off on that and save it for my summer 2025 recap, at which point the final volume will be out and I can give my thoughts on that entire series. So yeah, I think I did not read as much manga in the back half of the year. My final count was, let's see, I read a total of 128 books this year, and 12 of those were not manga. So that means, 115 volumes of manga this year, if I counted correctly. I might have forgotten to write down 1 or 2. And I think like 60 or 70 of those were in the first half of the year. So I need to step up my game a little. So anyway, I will see you for another batch of these in the summer of 2025. In the meantime, I would beseech everyone to leave comments on these videos. That would maybe help boost me in the algorithm a little better. Yeah, most of my videos nowadays don't get a whole lot of views, but the people who do comment are super nice. I'm super grateful for it. Also, join my Discord, which I always link in my videos. It's not a huge, like, super active community, but, you know, we be talking every couple days or so. I'm usually updating people on, like, manga I'm reading and anime I'm watching, games I'm playing, a lot of memes. You know, I just like to share that with everybody. So get yourself on there if you want to chat some more. Once again, I'm Trooth. Thanks for visiting my imaginary manga cafe. Well, here we are at the very end of another seasonal recap. If you've made it this far, big thanks for watching. Special thanks to the financial supporters of Trooth's Manga Cafe listed here. The audience question I have for this installment comes from the Gondola 9877, who asks, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin once said there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. Which of these two do you think we're currently living in, or perhaps some secret third thing? Well, that's a very profound question. A little bigger scope than I usually answer at these videos, but I did say ask me anything. I'm not an expert or anything, but I guess the subtle and nuanced answer would be that basically the same amount of things happen all the time, but it's more a matter of perception. And I think nowadays it feels more like we're living in weeks where decades happen. And I think that's mostly because it's easier than ever for people all over the world to share news with the whole rest of the world. You know, like if I want to find the latest news happening in, like, Sri Lanka, I can just search that on the internet and instantly be very informed on the subject. Whereas if I had lived, like, 100 or 200 years ago, I might go an entire lifetime not knowing Sri Lanka existed. So I hope that answers your question. Anybody else who wants to leave a question down below, please feel free to do so, although it might take until my summer recap before I get to answer it. But don't let that stop you. If you leave a question, I will definitely bring it up then. I'll talk to you again in a few months.